Hello, I'm Professor Kate Bird, co-host of the Power Shift Decolonising Development, and I'm speaking today to Charmaine McCaulay. I would like to speak to her about her work with Kokoro Therapy, leading the groundbreaking training program, Racism in Real Time. Now, in this episode, Charmaine outlines the central ideas behind racism in real time. And so, in a way, this is step one in a process of decolonisation, whereby we decolonise ourselves. We work on ourselves as part of the process of decolonisation. And Charmaine talks about how this is a very necessary first step before we step into institutional reform, organisational change, and shifting power from the global north or the minority world to the global south or majority world. Charmaine also talks about how systemic structures and inequalities are based on hierarchies of power and privilege, where race, gender, and class intersect, placing white establishment men at the very top and everyone else in gradations below that. She talks about how these privileged groups and classes are protected by institutions in our society, for example, the police, education services, science, and politics, and how when you are privileged as a group, although you may not feel privileged as an individual, you are able to dictate from that place of privilege. So the work that Charmaine is doing is about recognizing that power and privilege and beginning to do the work to strip out the tropes, the stresses, the racism in interracial and racialized interactions. And she identifies in this podcast episode why that is a very necessary first step in decolonising development. Hi, Charmaine. It's really nice to have the chance to speak to you again. What I would like to do, first of all, is hear about your groundbreaking training program, Racism in Real Time.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you, Kate. It's lovely to be with you today. Yeah, so let me just give you a very quick behind the scenes of how I came up with Racism in Real Time. Is because I've really been interested in racism, diversity, equity, feminism, and all those things that I need to be interested in. And in order for me to better understand the situation, I took a lot of courses over the years, and I would often feel really let down that I was missing something. And because it was really intellectualized in terms of, I was very proficient in understanding what white supremacy was. I could give you the definition of white fragility and so forth. But what I couldn't do was that when I was in a racialized situation, I would feel lost. I would feel shut down. I couldn't figure out a way of getting out from that. And so I decided that I would make a course where someone like me would go to. And so basically what makes my course very different than most people is because I include the body. So I don't give you a lot of definitions. I'm not asking you for you to think yourself through a situation. What happens is I've divided up two groups. There's one group for white folks for 10 weeks, and then there's one group for Black and brown and mixed race people. And the reason I did that is just from personal experience that whenever I was in any kind of training and there were white people there, inadvertently, I would feel silenced. Inadvertently, I would feel attacked. I would feel othered and really negated. And so I thought, what would happen if I separated out the two? And also conversely, the white folks too, they would say that whenever they were with Black and brown folks too, they would feel silenced. They would feel awkward and feel like, I don't know what to say. I don't know my next question. So they would shut down. So you have two sides that are shutting down, and there wasn't very much meeting going on. So what I've done is I have one group for white folks, one group for Black and brown. And I have to say, it really, really, really is extraordinary that in a matter of 10 weeks, both groups come through and the transformation is real. The transformation lasts. So just to give you a really very quick one for the white folks, So white folks will come in, they're terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing. They're terrified that they're going to upset me. And they do. And they will come and they attack because that's what they know how to do. They don't know how to see me. They don't know how to respond to my living body. And what I mean by that is generally in a racialized situation, the concept is for white people to win. White people need to know that they're on top. And that really says, you have to make sure that I don't speak. You have to make sure that my power is negated. Now, a lot of this is unconscious. Many white people aren't actually aware of this. Some of them are. So what we do is we start from the place of ignorance, that you don't know. And like any good therapy, any good situation, you have to bring yourself to the fore. So what happens in the 10 weeks is the white people start to realize just what they're doing in the room, not their thoughts, but their body response. So sometimes for many of us, when we're in a difficult situation, one of the first things that we do is we stop breathing. And when we stop breathing, we use that as a highlight that something has just happened in you. What is that for you? Or some people, they dissociate. Some people, they can't breathe. Some people, they'll feel a tightening in the stomach. So we really focus on the body's response to what's going on. And oftentimes the body response is much faster, much more immediate than the thinking process. And so after 10 weeks with different subject matters for the whites, I'm only talking about whites right now, they get much better attuned to when they are actually upset. Sometimes they don't even know that they're upset. They don't even know that there's stress. They don't even know that there's fear. So as soon as you start to recognize, you can then sit for a minute and go, what am I actually upset about? And so you so the speed with which you might want to say and take up the other person slows down.
So you're slowing everything down,
so
that people can actually engage their thinking brains and engage.
I would say engage more with their bodies because and the reason I say that is because most people can engage with their thinking brain. And your thinking brain, what happens, there can be a distortion. So for example, you might be fearful, but your brain goes, you're not in fear. You're all right. You're okay. You're good to go. And you cut off really what's actually happening down below. So the whole thing is to engage both. It's not to have the brain or the body. It's to have them both working together.
Okay. I thought that what you were saying was that people were feeling fearful and they were going into fight flight mode and they were actually without engaging their brains and thinking. So I don't know.
Well, they're speaking without recognizing that they're actually much more afraid than they really are. So they discount the shame, they discount the fear and go, yeah, I'm good to go. But all the muscles are very tight. Everything is tense, but they're cut off and they can't feel really what's happening below. So that's basically what it is.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to know next is how does your understanding of racism in the UK and Canada, in the global north, influence your thinking about decolonisation and the decolonisation agenda? What's the link for you?
So for me, I go back to what I know, and that's I'm a body psychotherapist. So how you are, how you feel about yourself is going to be about the things that you produce. So what I'm saying, first you have to decolonize yourself.
Okay.
Right? If you don't decolonize yourself and you don't know that you've been colonized, then whatever plans you have are going to be from that perception.
Okay.
You can only produce what you know how to do. So if you're not aware that your body and the way that you come into a room is already colonized, and you don't know that you're going to be colonizing another black and brown body, you're not aware of that. So for me, I often will ask, well, how have you decolonized yourself first?
Okay.
Right? So if you've worked on yourself and you can see that, for example, you're in a room, I'm talking about a white person, let's say a white person in a room with all black folks, right? And you don't know that already you've got a fear response going on. And you're already deciding how you're going to be with this black person. And it's going to be from a colonial perspective. I'm up, you're down. I am right, you're wrong. the development of my theories are going to be better than yours. My science will be better than your science. And if you're not even aware of how you hold that, right? Thought is energy in a way. And that is going to be in your body. It's going to be when you walk into a room.
Yeah.
So if you're not even aware of what your whiteness actually represents, not only to you, but to the other people in a room, you've already under a colonial perspective. Colonialism says white is right. We don't ever have to think about what we're doing. We know what we have to do. So white becomes invisible.
Okay.
Right. So first you have to understand your own internal sense of your whiteness.
So it's almost like white is the default.
Absolutely.
And anything other than white is both inferior and benchmarked against the greatness of whiteness.
Always.
Okay.
And white is not usually looked at in that way. It's neutral. It's the neutral position that many white people walk into the world. It's
and everyone else is the other.
Exactly. So if you haven't done the internal work to even recognize that that's what you're doing, so that's where my work comes in about decolonizing.
Okay, this is really interesting. I'd like to ask you a follow-up question then.
Okay.
So you've expressed that really clearly, and how whiteness is a benchmark and everyone else is the other.
Yes.
And that's a kind of hierarchy with white at the top and everyone else in grades below.
That's right. That's right.
So you've got that, and then you've got gender, and then you've got class, and they're all overlaying each other all the time.
That's right.
So you've got this kind of systemic set of structures and inequalities with educated white,
that's right,
middle class, intelligentsia,
yes,
or I don't know, capital owning men at the top, and in grades all the way down to wherever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, intersecting. So basically, if you are the white male, and we use that because in a white country they do have the benchmark. So what happens is, for the white male, is that you have all the institutions behind you lined up,
right,
which makes what you do okay. It means you've got the police, you've got education, you've got health, you've got politics, you've got science. Everything says,
and all the other institutions, everything,
right? And so
everything.
It's not the individual per se, is that you're the individual, but you've got all this long history to say that you get to show up in the way you want to and can, because the authority has given you that, and you get to dictate from that place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I've got it.
Okay.
Right. So when people are talking about intersecting inequality, that's really what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, I talk about intersecting inequality, but it's interesting to hear about it from your perspective, because I think you put a different, you have a different lens that you're shining on this. So it's interesting. So you talk about bodies, and I know that your work looks at how racially charged interactions impact on people's bodies. I was wondering if you could tell our listeners and viewers a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so whether you're white, mixed race, or black, whenever you're in a racially charged situation, you're always impacted. Sometimes you're not even aware of it. So I'll just give you a really good example. So it doesn't really matter. For one person, when they're in a racially charged situation, one of the things I've talked about is that your breathing stops.
Right.
Right. So your diaphragm collapses in and of itself. One of the things that happens is then the spine is no longer elongated. You actually can't take a breath in. So the spine curls down. You can see some people who want to dissociate, or whether you can almost go into yourself like this. And if you think about what's it like for you to speak from a position where your head is down and you cannot look up, what that could be, we could be saying that would be a shame response. And that can happen to anybody. So if you're in a shame response, trying to talk, whatever you're saying is going to be minimal. And your body to yourself has already become othered. Whereas the spine really is there. If the spine is erect enough, the spine is true north. And it gives you your sense of direction. It gives you your sense of where you are in the room. But if it's crumpled, if you think about your body and it's crumpled, you're like this. So if you go back to your thoughts, you can't think. You can't see straight. You don't know where you need to go. So that's one of the massive impacts on our body when we're in a racialized situation. And even when we come out of a racialized situation, let's say we go home, you will feel that in your body. Some people get massive headaches. Some people, their eyes hurt. Some people, they have gut responses, right? It's cramping. And some people have really tense shoulders. So that's an immediate response for anybody. When you're in a racialized situation, it takes you out, which in a way, it takes out your humanity. Like I said before, if you can stay in the heart and you have the heart open, the more I'm open this way, the less I'm going to see you as an attack, the less I'm going to see you as the other, right? Because the more this is open, the greater the expanse, the greater the breath, the more I'm able to breathe, the more relaxed I am.
Okay. Okay. So you're a relaxed person meeting another relaxed person, and you can actually meet as individuals, as people, and communicate as such.
You can, unless there's a racial wounding that goes on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when
so,
the
so
racial
if you take that out of the equation, then you're meeting a person rather than a black person meeting a white person, or whatever.
Right. Or let's say there's less othering.
Yeah.
There's a lot less.
Yeah.
So it's not just simply being relaxed. Sometimes we can be relaxed and we can be in the head.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying like the whole body is relaxed and open for a sharing. And then when the sharing happens, then something else can happen. And you and I, you can be you, I can be me, but we come together on whatever we want to discuss.
Right. Right. Yeah. So
yeah.
And then great things can happen.
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that we will see eye to eye. That's not what it says. It means that we will be equal in our understanding. We'll be what you want to present. I'll be able to hear what you want to say.
Right.
The way you want to hear.
Right. Rather than listening for, you're listening to.
I'm listening with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're not imposing in that situation. You're not bringing all your baggage and slamming it down on the table and rooting through the baggage to find out what you expect someone to say. You're actually listening.
That's right.
Really listening to what they're bringing.
And it's the whole body thing. Okay. I'm not jumping up into my head trying to not hear you, trying to guess your answers. There's much more of an incredible flow. It's like, oh, so this is what she's saying. Okay, let me think about that. Let me feel that. Okay. And then you're doing that with me too. So there's much more of a mutuality.
Okay. I can see how that would make a massive difference in working in international teams.
Absolutely. Right. And that's from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
If you have that basis, then it would be extraordinary that you can bring almost any idea, and I will sit with you. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but then we can sit and we can work together on that idea. Yeah. I'm not going to trash it.
Absolutely. We can bring our expert knowledge, we can bring whatever it is that we're bringing to the situation, we can bring all of that rather than just a tiny portion of it.
That's right.
We can bring our best selves.
Exactly. And that would be the decolonization. Then.
Okay. So in a separate conversation, we've talked about how, if that was to happen,
yes,
we would be able to have such effective teams. We would be bringing the expertise of the whole team.
We would rock.
Yeah.
We would be like soaring.
Okay.
So a lot of these conflicts that we have, like when we go back to the one that you were just talking about, that the way that knowledge is extracted and the way that knowledge is going to be used. So it would have been that you would have been able to sit down with teams and listen, I need to go back and talk to the people that I've got these lovely stories from. And there would have been an opening, that the sharing would have been magnificent.
Yeah. And someone somewhere would have been willing to pay for that.
And that would be it would be
an expectation that that's how the work is done.
That's right.
Okay. So, Charmaine, you've talked quite a lot about the body, and you've talked about how people are transformed by your course, Racism in Real Time. I wonder if you could tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about why you think personal transformation is a necessary starting point for working in decolonisation.
Well, you are what you eat. No, and I really do mean that. I mean, I think of myself too, in that the more that I can decolonize myself, the more that I can bring myself just as I am. It means the starting point, and I think I go back to the beginning. It means then my capacity to hear you, my capacity to hear things that might not, I'm like, I would be much more open. So that's why I really do stress. If you can work on yourself first, and I know some people go, oh, that's just so American. I don't want to work on myself, right? There's a lot of stuff like, but the more you can understand what it is that makes you angry, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you cannot listen to somebody else's voice? And let me say, I've been there too. The more you can understand your reactions when you go into shame, the more you can understand why are you fearful of this person who's standing in front of you, right? Why? What is happening in you? There are real reasons. And the body is one way to get there. And if you can work on that, like you said before, can you imagine? Can you imagine what we could do together? Because I can't do it by myself. And so if you're at the table in Decolonizing Development, and every person there has really worked on themselves and understands what the triggers are, we're less likely to blame the, oh, it was you, Barb. I don't like the way you look, and that's why I'm going to put you down.
Right.
It's like you start to own your own internal misgivings about somebody else. You're less likely to go and attack and negate another person's response.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder also if it's that if we've worked on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and recognized what's in us that needs to change,
Yes.
that that perhaps this all goes beyond words, that we're not just talking about doing a find and replace in a document and we'll take this word out, we'll put that word in instead, but it will actually mean that the way that we behave in our day-to-day lives and in our professional lives shifts and changes because something deep in us has changed.
You've said it brilliantly. Yeah, it's not just copy and paste.
Yeah.
It's like it does fundamentally, we're the ones who making the changes
Yeah.
and who want to, right?
So it's actually doing a click. It's changing something in our minds that changes is something about the way we look at the world, that changes something at the way that we behave, we act, we plan, we collaborate, we
That's
do.
right. Yeah. So it's for me, I would say it's the whole body mind. I don't see a separation because if there's something in the gut changes, my brain and my thoughts will automatically change.
Yeah.
Always like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating. Charmaine, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I've been very interested to hear more about your course, Racism in Real Time, and I've been very interested to hear things from your perspective. Okay. So, Charmaine, I shared with you earlier today some headlines that I'd seen in the Daily Mail.
Oh yeah.
And I went into a cafe and there was a Daily Mail on the table and I picked it up because I so rarely see a physical paper these days. And I started reading it and I had to put it down. But I thought it was so relevant to the work that we're doing that I sent you a link to the online version
Yes.
today. And I just wonder what you thought about the headlines and what you thought about the article, which was kind of expressing the decolonization agenda as being woke and kind of engaged in the culture wars and coming from the ideological hard left.
Yeah, I read it and I didn't think about it. And which was very different from yours, which is just an interesting thing. I think that it didn't really grab me much. It was rather stale. And the reason I thought about, I think my response is like, as a Black woman, I'm constantly bombarded with those kinds of statements. And I think I learn which ones are important, which ones are not. And this one is, again, it would be othering me, putting down Black people. We're not worthy to even decolonize anything, and that we're hard left. And I think the only time that that article would have really gotten me, and I would have been really upset, if somebody had died. Then I probably would have gotten really emotionally engaged. But I think for me, it's very common. It's very common trope to read headlines where Black and brown people are no good, and where we're woke. I mean, I mean, right now in the United States, they're talking about the critical race theory. We've got to get rid of that, right? So it's like, yeah, okay, is this the best you can do? Daily Mail, like, come on, let's get going here. So I guess, you know, like what you were saying, it's a way to divide up people. But I also see like those people who are going to move towards that were divided anyway.
Okay.
And so I'll just keep doing my work with you, and it will pass, and somebody else will take up the gauntlet to say that the work that you and I are invested in doing is just no good. But really don't make no difference to me.
Okay. That's a strong and robust response. It's a very healthy response, and I think it's interesting that our responses were so different, because I was fizzing with rage. I mean, I had to put the newspaper down several times. I was just like, oh my goodness, and you were just like, yada 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 yada, I don't care. Okay, so that's interesting. And so Charmaine, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights, and I feel I've learned a lot about a lot more than I knew before about your course, your training program, Racism in Real Time, and it's been very interesting hearing your insights. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. It always is.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to working with you on this podcast. I think you bring so much to this debate, and it's always such a pleasure. Before we say goodbye to our listeners and viewers, I wonder if you could identify one practical thing that they can do or change in order to contribute positively to the process of decolonization.
Well, the one thing is breathe.
Breathe.
Yeah, when you're stuck, one of the things that will alert you that something's not going on right is breathing. That's when everything gets constricted. So if you can, and I know for a lot of people, it's really difficult to breathe when you're in a conflicted situation. But I would say that was probably the most important thing. If you can keep breathing, and then other things will happen. Because as soon as you stop breathing, your body's effectively shutting down and you're getting smaller. And then the next possible step could be dissociation or the feeling of shame. But if you can keep breathing and open back up, I would say that's the one thing to practice moment by moment, if it's possible.
Thank you, Charmaine. I love what you bring to this, because it's so different to what I'm bringing as an academic and an intellectual. I'm there completely stuck in my head most of the time, and you're telling people to breathe. I think that's lovely. So I hope our listeners and viewers can take that forwards in their lives, and if in doubt, breathe. And it's amazing what can happen if you do.
I'm breathing now. It's like me and you, we're just breathing and we're just rocking on.
Okay, thank you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Katie.